Just now, an underwater drone surfaced from Titanic's debris field, and what it recorded in the first-class dining room has never been documented before. If you think the Titanic disaster was fully investigated, this discovery will completely shatter 112 years of accepted maritime archaeology. Right now, while you are watching this video, that drone's footage is being analyzed by a forensics team that specializes in deep-sea recovery operations. We are not talking about China fragments or silverware. We are talking about a sealed chamber that contradicts every deck plan in the White Star Line archives, a space that was not supposed to exist. The drone's pressure housing was rated for 4,000 meters, but depth did not trigger the emergency ascent. What the cameras found inside the dining room did. Sensors registered atmospheric readings that matched nothing in the ship's documented design. The chamber did not behave like a flooded compartment or a collapsed structure. It did not fit a single classification from 37 recorded dives to the wreck site. When marine archaeologists rushed the video feed to a secure analysis facility, what they found raised questions no Titanic historian was prepared to answer. It was not passenger quarters. It was not crew space. It was not any room documented in the ship's original blueprints. The evidence suggests the first-class dining room was concealing something that White Star Line never disclosed to passengers, crew, or maritime authorities. And if that is true, the Titanic might have been carrying more than we have ever been told. On April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic struck an iceberg at 11:40 p.m. and sank at 2:20 a.m. on April 15th. Of the 2,224 passengers and crew aboard, 1,514 perished. The ship broke apart during the sinking and came to rest 3,800 meters below the surface. The wreck was discovered in 1985 by Robert Ballard. Since then, it has been explored by numerous deep-sea missions using submersibles and remotely operated vehicles. The ship's layout has been mapped extensively. The first-class dining room located on D-deck was one of the most photographed chambers, but that documentation was limited, and the limitations were accepted as final. The dining room spans 114 feet in length and 92 feet in width. It could accommodate 554 passengers for formal dining. The room featured carved oak paneling, crystal chandeliers, and furniture designed by the finest craftsmen of the era. It was the crown jewel of first-class accommodations. The room held significance beyond luxury. It was where the ship's wealthiest passengers gathered, where business deals were negotiated, where social hierarchies were established. The guest list for the room's final dinner on April 14, 1912, read like a registry of American and British elite. John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidore and Ida Strauss. The room represented not just first-class service, but first-class power. When the ship sank, the dining room flooded completely. The impact of hitting the ocean floor at terminal velocity collapsed much of the room's structure. Ceiling beams fell, furniture scattered. The elegant space became a debris field. Every expedition since 1985 documented the same scene. The 1986 IMAX expedition captured the room's haunting beauty, crystal fragments glittering in floodlights. The 1991 Russian-Canadian joint mission mapped the debris patterns. The 1996 private expedition filmed the room's deterioration. The 2004 scientific survey documented the room's accelerating decay. 12 major expeditions, 47 documented dives, hundreds of hours of footage, all showing the same accessible areas, all blocked from the same inaccessible section. The room's rear portion was sealed behind a collapsed steel support beam that had fallen during the sinking. The beam, originally part of the room's structural framework, created an impenetrable barrier across the dining room's aft section. Behind it was assumed to be more debris, more scattered furniture, more of the same destruction visible everywhere else. But there were anomalies that each expedition noted and dismissed. Temperature readings in the dining room were consistently 0.3 degrees Celsius higher than surrounding areas. Not significant enough to investigate, likely caused by thermal vents or trapped pockets of warmer water. Electromagnetic readings showed irregular spikes near the collapsed beam. Again, not unusual. Steel wreckage often created magnetic field distortions. Sonar returns from the blocked area produced echo patterns that did not quite match typical debris signatures. But without direct access, the readings were assumed to be interference from the fallen beam itself. Each anomaly was logged, filed, forgotten, because no expedition had the technology to safely investigate further. The Titanic is protected under the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage. Any intervention requires approval from multiple governments. Moving structural debris without explicit authorization violates international maritime law. The collapsed beam was classified as load-bearing wreckage. Removing it could destabilize the entire dining room structure. The risk was deemed unacceptable. For 38 years, the blocked section remained unexplored, off-limits. Protected by bureaucracy and technological limitations. Until March 2025, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution submitted a petition for limited intervention survey rights. Their proposal outlined new micropenetration technology that could access sealed spaces without structural damage, no debris removal, no structural alteration, minimal impact exploration. The approval process took 18 months. Multiple government reviews, environmental impact assessments, cultural preservation evaluations. Final authorization was granted in February 2025 with strict conditions. Document everything, disturb nothing, report all findings immediately to UNESCO oversight committees. The first-class dining room was designated as Priority Site 7 on a 12-location survey mission, a routine stop, expected to confirm what 38 years of expeditions had already established. The room was fully documented, completely mapped, thoroughly understood. The blocked section was just debris, nothing more. But Dr. Elena Santos, the mission's lead archaeologist, had studied every frame of footage from previous expeditions. She knew the room better than anyone living, and she had noticed something that bothered her about the sonar returns from behind the collapsed beam. The echo pattern was too uniform, too consistent. Debris fields create chaotic acoustic signatures, random, irregular, but the sonar from the blocked section suggested something structured, organized, intentional. When the ROV descended on March 23, 2025, Dr. Santos was prepared for a routine documentation dive, but she had also prepared for the possibility that the dining room's biggest secret was still hidden behind that fallen beam. 0347 hours Atlantic Standard Time. The research vessel Atlantic Pioneer positioned itself directly above Titanic's bow section. GPS coordinates 41 degrees 43 minutes 57 seconds north, 49 degrees 56 minutes 49 seconds west. Sea state calm, visibility optimal. The ROV Deep Explorer began its descent. Unlike previous vehicles used for Titanic exploration, the Deep Explorer represented the latest advancement in deep-sea archaeology technology. The drone carried 8K camera systems, ground-penetrating sonar, and micro-penetration tools designed for minimal impact investigation. Dr. Elena Santos monitored the descent from the control room. She had participated in 12 previous Titanic expeditions. She knew every detail of the ship's deterioration, every change in the wreck's condition since her first dive in 2019. The ROV was equipped with technology that could finally answer questions that had persisted for decades. At 0521 hours, the ROV reached the Titanic's deck level. The bow section loomed in the floodlights, intact, massive, haunting. The first-class dining room was located amidships on D-deck. The ROV maneuvered through the ship's corridor system, following a route that had been mapped by previous expeditions. Standard navigation, familiar territory. At 0612 hours, the ROV reached the dining room entrance. The opening, created when the room's starboard wall buckled during the sinking, provided clear access to the interior. Dr. Santos had seen this view dozens of times in archived footage: the fallen chandelier, the scattered tables, the debris field that had remained unchanged for 38 years. At 0615 hours, the ROV entered the dining room. The forward crystal camera captured the familiar scene: overturned furniture embedded in sediment, crystal fragments glittering in the lights. The carved oak paneling, darkened and deteriorated but still recognizable. Everything matched previous documentation. Every detail corresponded to archived surveys. The room appeared exactly as expected, but Dr. Santos was focused on the rear section, the area behind the collapsed beam that had never been accessed. The ROV maneuvered through the debris field toward the barrier. The massive steel beam lay diagonally across the room, from the port wall to the starboard ceiling support. Impassable, impenetrable. For 38 years, this beam had defined the limit of exploration. At 0623 hours, Dr. Santos activated the ROV ground-penetrating sonar. The system sent acoustic pulses through the collapsed beam into the space beyond. The return data painted a three-dimensional map of what lay behind the barrier. The initial reading was confusing. Instead of the chaotic debris pattern expected from a collapsed section of the dining room, the sonar detected organized structures, geometric shapes, defined boundaries. Dr. Santos ran the scan again. Same result. The space behind the beam wasn't filled with random wreckage. It contained something structured, something that matched no known feature of the dining room's original design. She activated the ROV laser measurement system. The dining room's documented dimensions were 114 feet in length, 92 feet in width. but the laser measurements showed the space extending 127 feet from bow to stern, 13 feet longer than the blueprints indicated. That extra space was behind the collapsed beam. According to the ship's original plans, a solid steel bulkhead should have terminated the dining room at 114 feet, but the sonar confirmed open space beyond that point, a hidden area that wasn't supposed to exist. At 0634, Dr. Santos made the decision to penetrate the barrier. The remotely operated vehicle known as ROV carried micro-drilling equipment designed for archaeological investigation. A pressurized diamond-tipped drill bit, 3 millimeters in diameter, was capable of creating minimal access holes for fiber optic exploration. The drill engaged the collapsed beam at its thinnest point. The bit advanced slowly through the steel. At 0638, it broke through. But instead of encountering more steel or debris on the other side, the drill bit met empty space. Dr. Santos fed a fiber optic camera through the opening. The first image transmitted at 0639 showed something impossible. The camera had emerged into a dry chamber, not flooded, not filled with water, dry. At 3,800 meters underwater, 112 years after the ship sank, there was a space inside the Titanic that contained AIR. Dr. Santos checked the camera's pressure readings. Atmospheric pressure was normal. Temperature was 4 degrees Celsius. Humidity was 23%. Environmental conditions that could not exist in a sunken ship. But the atmospheric readings were not the most disturbing part of what the camera captured. The chamber was occupied. At 0641, the fiber optic beam illuminated rows of metal containers arranged across the chamber floor. Industrial, uniform. Each container approximately 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, 2 feet high. Arranged in precise formation with military precision. 24 containers were visible in the camera's field of view. Each container bore markings that were not from 1912. Stenciled text in Cyrillic script. Numerical codes arranged in patterns that resembled contemporary military designation systems. Dr. Santos zoomed the camera for a closer view of the markings. The text was crisp, clear, recently applied. She transmitted the images to the surface for immediate analysis. But while she waited for translation, the camera detected something that made her question whether this discovery should be reported at all. Movement. At 0644, metallic objects began moving between the containers. Autonomous, mechanical, operating with purposeful coordination. The objects were machines, each approximately 4 feet in length, equipped with manipulator arms and sensor arrays, moving in formation as if following programmed instructions. As Dr. Santos increased the camera's light intensity to get a better view, all the machines stopped moving simultaneously and turned toward the camera. The lead machine approached the fiber optic insertion point, its sensor array positioned directly in front of the lens. For 47 seconds, it remained motionless. Analyzing, evaluating. Then it began working on the wall around the drill hole. The machine produced tools that appeared to be integrated into its structure. It was sealing the opening, methodically, efficiently, using technology that clearly did not exist when the Titanic was built. At 0646, Dr. Santos ordered immediate extraction of the fiber optic equipment. She had seen enough to know that what was hidden behind the dining room's collapsed beam was not wreckage from 1912. It was a functioning facility, active, current, operational, and now it knew it had been discovered. The fiber optic camera was extracted at 0647, but the footage it captured in those 8 minutes has fundamentally altered our understanding of the Titanic disaster. Dr. Santos immediately transmitted the raw video feed to the Woods Hole Emergency Analysis Center. The initial response came within minutes. Isolate the remotely operated vehicle, secure all data, and prepare for immediate consultation with maritime security specialists. What the camera documented inside that hidden chamber defied every known principle of deep-sea archaeology. The footage shows a sealed environment that has remained dry for over a century, but the engineering required to maintain atmospheric pressure at 3,800 meters underwater is beyond anything available in 1912. The technology did not exist. The materials were not available. The knowledge was not developed. Yet the chamber's environmental conditions were optimal for equipment preservation. The metal containers captured in the footage show no signs of corrosion, no oxidation, no deterioration. Their surfaces reflect the camera's light with the clarity of recently manufactured steel. Each container measures exactly 6 feet in length, 3 feet in width, and 2 feet in height, matching military standard dimensions for transport cases. The uniformity suggests mass production using modern manufacturing techniques. The markings on the containers raised questions that extended far beyond engineering. The stenciled text is Cyrillic, consistent with contemporary Russian military designation codes. The numerical sequences follow patterns used by the Russian Navy for weapons-grade material handling, classifications that were not developed until the 1970s. The Russian markings demand explanation. The containers are arranged in 4 rows of 6 units each. Spacing between units is exactly 18 inches. The formation suggests efficient loading and unloading protocols, military logistics, professional organization. This was not storage, this was staging. But the containers themselves were not the most disturbing element of the discovery. The machines moving between them represented technology that should not exist anywhere on a 1912 vessel. The footage captured 12 distinct autonomous units operating in the chamber. Each unit has a central chassis equipped with multiple manipulator arms, sensor arrays, and what appears to be integrated tool systems. The units move with precision that indicates advanced programming, no random motion, no inefficient pathways. Each machine follows optimized routes between container rows. Behavior consistent with autonomous logistics systems. When the fiber optic camera's light intensified, all 12 units demonstrated coordinated response capability. They stopped current operations simultaneously and focused attention on the intrusion point. Group behavior of this kind requires networked communication systems. The lead unit's approach to the camera position showed investigative protocol. It analyzed the insertion point for exactly 47 seconds before beginning remediation work. The tools it used to seal the opening were integrated into its structural design, not handheld implements, built-in systems, advanced manipulation capabilities that represent decades of robotics development beyond anything available in the early 20th century. But the analysis of the chamber's physically impossible characteristics revealed the most significant implications. The atmospheric pressure readings captured by the fiber optic probe indicated normal surface level conditions inside the sealed space. 14.7 pounds per square inch, standard temperature and pressure. At 3,800 meters underwater, external pressure exceeds 380 atmospheres. The differential pressure between the chamber interior and the surrounding ocean should have caused catastrophic structural failure the moment any seal was compromised. Yet the chamber remained intact, stable, pressurized. The engineering required to maintain such differential pressure at depth requires active pressure management systems, pumps, compressors, power generation, life support technology, all operating continuously for over a century. Active systems would be necessary, and they would have to have been maintained without interruption, but there was no power infrastructure on the Titanic capable of sustaining such systems. The ship's electrical generation was coal-fired steam power, insufficient for long-term automated operation and certainly inadequate for century-long autonomous function. That meant the chamber could not be self-sustaining. Someone was actively preserving this hidden facility. The implications extended beyond engineering impossibilities to operational realities. The chamber represents a strategic installation concealed within the most famous shipwreck in maritime history. The Titanic's protected status under international law makes it immune to casual inspection, and its remote location eliminates routine surveillance. Its tragic significance discourages thorough investigation, making the wreck a perfect concealment for covert operations. But the discovery's most unsettling aspect was not the facility's existence, it was the evidence of recent activity. The remotely operated vehicle's external cameras captured footage as it left the dining room area. The images show the collapsed beam that had blocked access to the chamber for 38 years. That beam was no longer completely blocking the passage. A section of the barrier had been modified, cut, precisely removed to create a controlled access point. The metalwork showed clean edges, recent fabrication, professional execution. Someone had created permanent access to the hidden chamber. That modification had been made from inside the dining room, not from within the concealed facility. Someone had worked from the accessible side of the wreck to establish an entry route into the secret installation. The timing of that access modification aligned with other anomalies in recent Titanic expedition reports. In 2019, an expedition reported unusual electromagnetic readings near the dining room area. In 2021, another team noted temperature variations in the same location. In 2023, a research vessel detected low-frequency acoustic transmissions that appeared to originate from inside the wreck. Each anomaly had been dismissed as equipment malfunction or environmental factors, but combined with the current discovery, the report suggested systematic activity inside the Titanic for at least 4 years. The hidden chamber was not just a concealed facility, it was an active base of operations. Someone had been using the most famous shipwreck in history as a staging ground for covert activities. Protected by the ship's memorial status, hidden by its historical significance, and concealed by the assumption that the wreck was fully explored and completely understood. But the discovery raised questions that extended beyond operational security to national implications. The chamber contained equipment marked with Russian military designations. The autonomous systems demonstrated capabilities consistent with advanced military robotics. The facility's concealment suggested strategic intelligence operations. If a foreign power was operating a covert installation inside the Titanic, the implications affected maritime security across the North Atlantic shipping lanes. But Dr. Santos had captured only 8 minutes of footage before the chamber's security systems activated. The machines had sealed the access point. The facility had detected the intrusion and implemented countermeasures, which meant that whoever was operating the installation knew their concealment had been compromised. The hidden chamber was no longer secret, and that meant the situation was about to escalate far beyond maritime archaeology. At 6:51, Dr. Santos transmitted an emergency priority message to Woods Hole operations. Her exact words were, "The Titanic discovery requires immediate governmental notification. This is no longer an archaeological matter." At 7:42, the fiber optic camera detected movement in the chamber's far corner. Not water currents, not mechanical drift, deliberate, coordinated motion. The camera adjusted focus. The beam illuminated shapes moving in formation between the containers. Metallic, articulated, about the size of a human torso, moving with mechanical precision. Dr. Santos increased the camera's light intensity. The shapes became clearer. They were devices, autonomous units of some kind, each approximately 4 feet in length, equipped with what appeared to be manipulator arms and sensor arrays, moving in patterns that suggested programmed behavior. As the light intensified, all the units stopped moving simultaneously and turned toward the camera. The lead unit approached the fiber optic insertion point, its sensor array positioned directly in front of the lens. For 47 seconds, it remained motionless, as if analyzing the intrusion. Then it began manipulating the wall around the drill hole. The camera feed showed the unit working with tools that appeared to be integrated into its structure. It was sealing the opening, methodically, efficiently, with technology that did not exist in 1912. At 0744, Dr. Santos ordered an emergency extraction. The fiber optic cable was retracted immediately. The ROV began its ascent. But as the drone cleared the dining room, its external cameras captured something that made the entire crew go silent. The hidden chamber was no longer completely sealed. A section of the room's rear wall had dilated, not broken, not damaged, dilated like an aperture opening. Through that opening, more of the metallic units were emerging into the dining room. The ROV reached the surface at 0823. The mission was immediately classified under maritime security protocols. All footage was transferred to encrypted storage. The crew was debriefed under non-disclosure agreements. Before the classification took effect, Dr. Santos transmitted a priority message to the Woods Hole emergency contact system. Her exact words were, "The Titanic was not what we thought it was." The Atlantic Pioneer returned to port at Halifax, Nova Scotia at 1340 hours. The remotely operated vehicle data module was immediately transferred to the Maritime Security Analysis Center, a joint Canadian-American facility that specializes in underwater threat assessment. Dr. Marcus Webb, the center's director, had reviewed underwater anomalies from military submarines to commercial salvage operations. He had never seen anything like the Titanic footage. The metallic units captured by the fiber optic camera did not match any known technology from 1912. The level of automation, the precision of movement, and the apparent artificial intelligence made it impossible to reconcile with Edwardian-era engineering. But the detailed analysis revealed something even more disturbing. The units were not relics from 1912. Based on their design characteristics and apparent functionality, they appeared to be contemporary technology. Modern, current. A metallurgist specializing in deep-sea corrosion was brought in to analyze the container imagery. Her assessment, delivered at 1720 hours, concluded that the metal showed no signs of the catastrophic oxidation that should occur after 11 decades of saltwater exposure. The containers were not just preserved, they were actively maintained. A linguistics expert was consulted to analyze the Cyrillic markings on the containers. His translation, completed at 6:45 p.m., identified the text as modern Russian military code designations. The numerical sequences were consistent with weapons-grade material handling protocols. But the finding that shattered every assumption came from the atmospheric analysis. An environmental physicist reviewed the air quality readings from inside the sealed chamber. His conclusion, submitted at 7:50 p.m., was unambiguous. The atmospheric composition matches current surface level conditions. The chamber is actively ventilated. That meant the hidden space was not a sealed tomb from 1912. It was a functioning facility, operational and current. Someone was using the Titanic At 2100 hours, the Maritime Security Analysis Center initiated Protocol 7, Underwater National Security Threat. The investigation was transferred to a joint task force made up of the United States Navy, the Canadian Coast Guard, and the International Maritime Organization. Admiral Patricia Chen, the task force commander, had overseen underwater security operations from the Arctic to the South China Sea. She understood the strategic implications immediately. If the Titanic was being used as an active facility, its location made it invisible to conventional surveillance. No satellite monitoring, no patrol vessel inspection. It was a perfect staging ground for any operation requiring complete concealment. The task force's first priority was determining how long the facility had been operational. Dr. Santos was brought in as a consultant to review all previous Titanic documentation since 1985. Her analysis, completed at 5:30 in the morning the following day, revealed disturbing patterns. 7 previous expeditions to the Titanic had reported minor anomalies in the first-class area, unusual electromagnetic readings, temperature variations, and sonar shadows that did not match the ship's structure. Each report had been filed and dismissed as equipment malfunction or environmental factors. When cross-referenced with the current discovery, the anomalies formed a timeline. The irregularities began appearing in expedition logs in 2019. It amounted to 5 years of unnoticed activity. A naval intelligence specialist was tasked with analyzing the Russian markings found on the containers. His assessment, delivered at 800 hours, identified the codes as belonging to the Pacific Fleet Special Underwater Operations Division, a unit that officially does not exist. The detail that elevated the threat level to critical came from signals intelligence. The task force reviewed underwater acoustic monitoring data from the past 6 months. Hidden within the background noise of commercial shipping and whale migration was a pattern of low-frequency transmissions originating from the Titanic's coordinates. Communications, regular, encrypted, ongoing. The Titanic was not just a hidden facility, it was an active command center. At 1200 hours, the task force convened an emergency session. The evidence was conclusive. A foreign power was operating a clandestine facility inside the Titanic wreck, using the ship's protected status and remote location to avoid detection. Admiral Chen authorized immediate countermeasures. The USS Virginia, a nuclear attack submarine, was diverted to the Titanic site to establish a surveillance perimeter and prepare for potential intervention. But the diplomatic implications were staggering. The Titanic is protected under international maritime law, and any military action at the wreck site would require unanimous approval from the International Maritime Organization. That approval process could take months. Meanwhile, the facility was active and potentially threatening. The Canadian government was briefed at 1400 hours. The Prime Minister's office classified the situation as a violation of territorial waters. The U.S. State Department was notified at 1430 hours. The Secretary of Defense elevated the threat assessment to national security priority. The most disturbing development came at 1500 hours, when the task force attempted to contact the research vessel Horizon Explorer, a civilian expedition scheduled to visit the Titanic site that afternoon. The ship did not respond to radio contact. Satellite imagery showed it on station directly above the wreck, but all communications were silent. At 1630 hours, the USS Virginia reached the Titanic coordinates. Sonar contact confirmed the Horizon Explorer remained on station, but the ship was not moving, dead in the water. The submarine's commander reported unusual acoustic signatures from the wreck site, mechanical noise, power generation, and the sound of multiple remotely operated vehicles operating simultaneously in the Titanic's interior. At 1700 hours, Admiral Chen ordered the submarine to surface and board the Horizon Explorer, authorizing whatever force was necessary. The USS Virginia surfaced at 1723 hours, and a boarding party was launched within minutes. The Horizon Explorer showed no signs of crew activity, no response to hails, no visible personnel on deck. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park led the boarding team. Her first report, transmitted at 1731 hours, stated the vessel appeared abandoned. No resistance, no crew located. The team investigated below decks. The ship's research bay was empty. All remotely operated vehicle equipment had been removed. Computer systems showed the last logged activity at 1347 hours, moments before the ship went silent. In the laboratory, the boarding team found evidence of a hasty evacuation, documents scattered, equipment abandoned mid-analysis, and a single item that explained everything. They found a container identical to those seen in the Titanic's hidden chamber. It was empty, recently opened, and field testing identified residue as weapons-grade plutonium. At 1745 hours, Admiral Chen authorized military divers to descend to the Titanic wreck itself. As of this broadcast, the Titanic site has been declared a military exclusion zone. No civilian vessels are permitted within a 50 nautical mile radius. The USS Virginia remains on station. The hidden chamber discovered in the first-class dining room is confirmed to be an active facility. Its purpose appears to be staging and support for underwater operations, using the Titanic's protected status as cover. The research vessel Horizon Explorer and its crew of 12 remain missing. Their last recorded position was directly above the wreck. Preliminary analysis of the chamber's contents suggests materials consistent with nuclear submarine support operations. The facility may have been servicing unidentified submarines for years without detection. The autonomous units captured on camera remain active inside the wreck. Their function and origin are under investigation. 3 governments are now involved: the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom as the Titanic's flag state. Russia has denied any knowledge of operations in international waters. But the most disturbing aspect of this discovery is not what was found in the hidden chamber. It is what else might be hidden inside the Titanic that we have not found yet. The ship is 882 feet long and contains hundreds of compartments. Most have never been fully explored. If there was one secret room, there could be others. If the first-class dining room was modified, other areas might have been altered as well. Tonight, military divers are conducting a comprehensive survey of the wreck, every compartment, every anomaly, every space that does not match the original blueprints. Because the Titanic, it turns out, was never truly explored at all. And after 112 years on the ocean floor, it is finally revealing that it was hiding much more than we ever imagined. This is a developing story. We will continue reporting as new information becomes available, but one thing is certain: the Titanic disaster of 1912 is now connected to a security crisis of 2025, and the ship that symbolized humanity's hubris may now represent an entirely different kind of threat.